The Lord of the Rings is arguably the best movie trilogy to exist. The sheer amount of lore within the world of Middle-earth goes beyond the pages of Tolkien, beyond the notes he left behind, beyond what is seen in Peter Jackson's perfect adaptation, extended edition especially, beyond even the hours of documentaries detailing a production that captured lightning in a bottle. The commentaries that cover The Return of the King give even more information, and we're here to disclose those details. We will try to keep all info relegated to the director and writer's commentary for Film 3, so details better told in the behind-the-scenes features, such as the alternate climax where Sauron fights Aragorn at the Black Gate, will not be covered on this list. This being the final film made it important to reiterate the ring being discovered by hobbits, because the end of a ring's story will be its destruction by hobbits. Andy Serkis, who revolutionized cinema by playing Gollum, directed a part of his own flashback scene, since no other director was available. Andy will eventually go on to be the second unit director for the Hobbit trilogy. A placeholder opening for Film 3 started with the Paths of the Dead as a lightning-fast camera spreads out of the White Mountains, comes into Meduseld, and flashes to Aragorn waking from a nightmare. This was back before Saruman's death was pushed to the opening of Return of the King. Reintroduction of Frodo, Sam, and Gollum also reestablishes the Lambus spread, since this would be a sticking point in Frodo and Sam's relationship, as well as juxtapose Sam's belief in their ability to journey home with a later moment in Mordor. Director Peter Jackson took a nibble on the prop, identifying it as not at all tasty, causing the writers to joke that it was he who took the bread and not Gollum. Flooded Isengard was a parking lot made into a wet set. It was the same set as the filming location for the West Gate of Moria, The Dead Marshes, and Osgiliath a Night. Not in the extended cut is Saruman bragging he ordered Wormtongue to assassinate Theodred, the Prince of Rohan, by pouring poison through the ear, to which Wormtongue shouts, "You made me do it!" One deleted scene not in the extended cut is Legolas asking Treebeard what the Ents think of the elves leaving Middle-earth, which would have cut to Arwen and her hopeful vision for the future. Gimli's drunk line,
"Yes, the dwarves that go swimming with little hairy women,"
is a John Rhys Davies ad-lib referencing Captain Quint from Jaws.
"Yes, to swimming with bow-legged women."
The scene where Gollum plots to kill the hobbits was shot before the more familiar scene in Film 2 was ever conceived. Peter prefers one they shot later over water reflection, as the setup is a big cliché. The palantir foretelling the doom of Minas Tirith was identified by the writers as a first act end for Film 3. In the books, this is actually a secondary ending for Two Towers. A lot of the scenes in the second book got pushed to the third film. One idea for the palantir scene was to include Pippin in a fiery cage overlooking Sauron's takeover, as a metaphysical representation for what the Hobbit is feeling when he looks into the palantir. Writers stressed that Gandalf riding to Minas Tirith with Pippin was most importantly to warn Gondor, but secondarily to keep him safe now that Sauron and his ringwraiths suspect he's the ring-bearer. Pippin parts with Merry on uncertain terms to ratchet up the drama. Arwen's vision was a necessary beat to explain what motivates her to stay if she was convinced to forsake Aragorn in the previous film. These moments in Rivendell were once considered to be the penultimate sequence for Film 2, but later reconsidered to better leave Arwen's decision unfulfilled until the final movie. Eldarion, Aragorn and Arwen's future son, is played by 5-year-old Sadwin Brophy, the son of stunt performer Jed Brophy. The elf escort who reminds Arwen they cannot delay is played by Fly the Conchord's comedian Brett McKenzie. This was a fan-made character named Figwit, only previously seen at the Council of Elrond. Figwit is an acronym for Frodo is great, who is that? When one girl got a massive crush on this background elf and it began a viral campaign around him. Peter jokes that the female crew members attracted to Sean Bean, including writer Philippa Boyens, allegedly, were mocked as, are you ready for this? Beanstalkers. The benefit that Minas Tirith, the capital of Gondor, is in close proximity to Mordor is that the editing between Gandalf and Frodo's story suggests a close proximity as well. The scene where Sam encourages Frodo they shall return home someday was intended to mirror the film 1 moment where a hesitant Sam says, if I take one more step, I'll be the farthest away from home. No visual effects were necessary to cheat scale for when Pippin leans on a stone railing. Billy was simply kneeling. Roy Tolkien, Tolkien's great-grandson, is the Gondorian extra handing out spears. Legolas warns Gimli their homelands must be under attack by now. This is all that hints at the widespread war rampaging across Middle-earth. In the book, it is discussed that Lothlorien is burning and Thranduil's Hall in Mirkwood is under siege. Both elven lands are attacked by the orcs from Gundabad, Moria, and Dol Guldur. On top of everything, on the same day as the Battle of Pelennor Fields, the Lonely Mountain is barely kept secure against a mass of Easterlings. The scene where Gandalf wards off the Nazgul from the retreating Osgiliath soldiers was meant for when Gandalf and Pippin first arrived at the capital city, Minas Tirith. That would technically explain why Gandalf drags Pippin out for no apparent reason in the final cut. Also means the assault on Osgiliath was originally edited to commence before Gandalf arrives to Minas Tirith. Philippa explains that Pippin understands Faramir being a disappointment. Pippin's father was molding his hobbit son into a position of civil service, but rather than become the next Thane of the Shire, Pippin was troublemaking with Merry. The book had Merry inherit Theoden's childhood armor, rather than Pippin inheriting Faramir's. When Denethor calls on a captain who still has the courage to do his lord's will, he is threatening to send Pippin to reclaim Osgiliath. This is also what forces Faramir's hand to volunteer, leaving both in a traumatic position. Frodo sends Sam away in part because Frodo has been witnessing the infighting between Sam and Gollum. Frodo has long told himself that the mission to destroy the ring goes above friendship, hence why he abandons the fellowship at Amon Hen. It gives a message not to push one's true friends away. The scene also serves to shock fans of a book who know how the story ends. If Sam is left behind, what else could happen next? One way around the lessening tension and how the Rohirrim would have the luxury to camp at Dunharrow was that they were amassing as big a cavalry as possible, but still needed further reinforcements. This drives Aragorn to abandon them for his own side quest, in order to save the Rohirrim at Pelennor Fields. Arwen is dying because she is going through the stages to surrender immortality. By taking on the elements of Middle-earth, she feels the rising evil of Sauron, who still has some elemental control over the world. It gives stakes by tying her life force directly to Frodo and Aragorn's ability to succeed. Aragorn taking Anduril was changed from being in film 1 because the writers wanted Aragorn's acceptance over his fate to come at a pivotal moment, requiring his mentor figure, Elrond, to be a courier. In the book, Elrond sent his sons Elladan and Elrohir along with Dunedain rangers known as Grey Company. A plot contrivance from the book was that Merry does not recognize Arwen while she's disguised under the helmet. It works for a novel, but becomes infeasible for a visual medium. Merry would be far too dense if he could not recognize the person he's been riding with 4 days on end as someone he already knows. The horse crowd leaving Dunharrow was CGI. It was once an aerial shot featuring Gandalf riding his horse-drawn cart into the Shire. A candid explanation as for why there are only skulls in the avalanche and not other bones is that after the accursed Oathbreakers starved in the White Mountains, someone from Gondor came along to separate their remains so that their spirits could never find peace. When the mayor of Wellington, Mark Bloomsky, visited the set, Peter Jackson tasked him to chuck baskets full of severed heads from off-screen. The Battle of Pelennor Fields goes through stages, each focusing on who is winning or losing. Once the Nazgul attack, their power isn't so much physical but fanning terror through black magic, destroying Gondorian morale. It is a detail-given elaboration in the book. Shelob's lair undulates up and down. The director's opinion is that film sets featuring creepy tunnels get the alcoves and hidden passages right, but forget that caves have an uneven floor. Adding to the anxiety are a few moving POV shots to put the camera in Shelob's perspective. Another reason to move Shelob's lair from the end of Two Towers to the middle of Return of the King was that the Frodo/Sam story would have been bloated leading up to their established climax of a ring's destruction. Most of the Fourth Age chapters had already been removed for the sake of a cinematic interpretation, the Scouring of the Shire especially. When Frodo collapses from physical exhaustion but soon gets up, this is not so much because of hope, but that the ring refuses to allow Frodo to relax until it's gone. CGI of the Berserker Trolls was done nearing the end of post-production, only 4 weeks before the December premiere. Elijah popped an Alka-Seltzer in his mouth to create reactive spit foam. Sam holding a paralyzed Frodo was the audition sample all potential actors had to go through to win the part. Philippa was dubious if Sean Astin could pull off a British accent through his self-tapes, but only he, ironically over the young English actors, was able to convey the desired grief for the character. The montage of orcs, trolls, and wargs ransacking Minas Tirith was done not just to convey the despair of the battle, but to give the Rohirrim charge further value. The commentators are split on the Witch King's confrontation with Gandalf in the extended edition. The writers feel this lessens the Witch King's threat level for when he fights Arwen because he abandons the killing blow on Gandalf. The director, on the other hand, thought the visual moment felt cinematic and showed how the Nazgul's capabilities stems directly from Sauron, and was enough to combat the wizards. Peter Jackson is most proud with the charge of a Rohirrim over any other scene in the entire trilogy. He's fond of how he memorized the cuts while working on the script, years before any of the trilogy was shot. For his shoot, he played off his memory without any storyboards drawn or needed. Bernard Hill, actor for Theoden, suggested he should do a speech before charge, as well as bang a sword against the front line to boost morale. There are up to 6,000 horsemen for the charge, as mentioned in the book. Tolkien chose this enormous, though specific number because it's historically accurate. For example, the Battle of Waterloo had 6,000 horsemen, which signified Emperor Napoleon's defeat. The image of Denethor running off a bow of Minas Tirith is not in the book, but another long-ago image Peter had in his head. He admits it could not possibly happen because it is around a mile between the mausoleum and the other side of the city. In-studio test audiences took issue with giant elephants receiving mortal injury, shifting audience sympathy to Sauron's army. Most of the gruesome shots were removed, like an arrow to the eye, leaving behind a number of Mumakils stepping on horses and shifting the sympathy back to the home team. The Orc lieutenant with a skull atop his helmet, according to Fran Walsh at least, had a backstory claiming he's a mama's boy who always carried the skull of his mother so they could still be together. Viggo's son, Henry Mortensen, was the first orc Aragorn kills following the Witch King's death. By that point, Henry's growth spurt made him taller than his dad. Theoden's death, as seen in the final cut, is a redo. The original had too many unfitting takes. Theoden does say the line from the novel, "I wish I could see Aomir again," but that felt like a service to Arwen.
I am no man.
And order the army of the dead into Mordor. It's a logical fallacy the movie never clarifies, though the commentators explain that if Aragorn breaks his vow, it would go against everything he's been journeying toward. These Oathbreakers have already proven treacherous to stake the world's fate on. The scene where Pippin finds Merry was shot in the daytime, but color graded to look like night for the extended cut. The nighttime setting adds poignancy by showing that Pippin has been searching for his friend for hours. Atop the tower of Cirith Ungol, Gorbag's wig falls off and pops back on between the shots where Shagrat tosses him at the trapdoor. There is an extra beat of Sam fending off the psychic defense of the Watchers, a pair of gargoyles at either side of the entrance to Cirith Ungol. It is a hurdle in the book, and shot for a movie, but it slowed pacing down too much. Sam hesitates giving the ring back to Frodo, originally filmed as Sam reacting to the disturbingly aggressive attitude from his friend. It is instead edited to look like Sam is already feeling the seduction of the ring, and it is Frodo who is the one being protective. Arwen and Faramir falling in love gives the two characters who are troubled by their father figures something to move on to. Faramir noticeably behaves more fragile ever since Denethor's pyre. Frodo and Sam are disguised as orcs and conscripted to march toward the Black Gate. This was a chapter hurdle in the book that hurts third act pacing, though the director always found it entertaining. It's ironic that Aragorn takes a gamble on drawing Sauron's army to make Frodo's path easier, only to force Frodo away from Mount Doom. The Inspector is Peter's favorite orc design, with a chewed-off nose, almost like he's got leprosy. Flute solo as Frodo and Sam struggle up Mount Doom. is Peter Jackson's favorite piece of Howard Shore music throughout the trilogy. The slope of Mount Doom was shot near the summit of an actual volcano, Mount Ruapehu. They only had a day there since it was such a remote location. Therefore, the beautiful dialogue had to be rushed in under 3 hours before sunset. Peter made the rookie mistake of wasting too much time shooting the unimportant non-dialogue portions instead of focusing on what the scene is all about. Editors intercut Sam saving a suicidal Frodo to the ring finally melting away, as if to infer these actions are one and the same. The movie adds to the destruction of Mordor beyond the Dark Tower and Mount Doom by swallowing up all of the Land of Shadows in a cataclysmic earthquake. Peter thought such a history-changing event calls for biblical imagery, like the parting of the Red Sea. Frodo waking up to see Gandalf was a mirror situation to Frodo waking up in Rivendell after surviving his wound from the Morgul blade. Actor Ian McKellen suggested that the first thing Gandalf would do seeing Frodo alive and victorious would be to laugh. Laugh with the purest of joy. Aragorn and the free peoples of Middle-earth bowing to the four hobbits is Peter's favorite moment in the trilogy. Scrolling through a map from Minas Tirith to the Shire would have included epilogue flashes for what happened to the other characters. For example, what happened to Arwen and Faramir, show Gimli inside the glittering caves, behind Helm's Deep. Legolas meets with Treebeard. Peter's gut told him they wouldn't be as fun to watch as they would to conceptualize. Still shot just in case. A line written by Philippa has Frodo say to Sam after finishing Bilbo's book, "Bilbo always said the greatest stories never end." Fran crossed it out as being too much of a self-aware comment on the movie itself. Frodo's narration of the epilogue had even more voiceover than what is in the extended cut. Cate Blanchett acted for only 1 week. In that brief amount of time, she did all her scenes for all 3 movies. Gandalf wears one of the 3 elven rings of power, but only for the Grey Haven scene. It's a nod for the hardcore fans, and fitting since the very last page of a Silmarillion makes this detail known. Sam and Rosie's daughter is played by Sean Astin's own daughter, Alexandra. The other baby is the daughter of Sarah McLeod, Rosie's actress. In the Oscar-winning original song, Into the West, the voice for the lyrics was imagined as Galadriel serenading Frodo while they crossed the Sundering Sea. Philippa Boylan thanks the fans for making the trilogy authentic and keeping them on their toes. Peter concurs, fear is a great motivating force. We go further because there are other people out there who care about this. It's not just us. Peter stated he's considering a 25th anniversary extended edition for the trilogy. And I've done the math. That box set should be released in either 2026 or 2028. This has been Connor with Culture Slate. If you enjoyed this video, remember to like and subscribe. You can also hit the bell icon and join our public Discord to stay up to date with all things Culture Slate.